Hey, folks, welcome back. Episode 14 of The Carl Zahn Show. We got a lot to get into this week, so we're going to dive right into it. Another action-packed week in cultural and political world. So last week's show, we talked about Donald Trump. Former President Trump was talking about doing a rally in the South Bronx of New York, which talked about on last week's show. If he did that, it's going to be epic. It's going to be historic. It's one of the things I love about Donald Trump is that he's ballsy with stuff like that. That's a political third rail. It could have easily gone not well for him and given the far left, fodder for Trump's crazy idea about holding a rally in the Bronx and all that. Well, not surprisingly, the rally in the South Bronx was an epic success for former President Donald Trump. He spoke for just under 2 hours. He drew a crowd of, again, the crowd estimates, but anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 people. You can tell if you look at the video, it was huge. And it was really reassuring because you look at this crowd and there's people of every ethnic background. I mean, every ethnic background. And I think a lot of people, including myself, are finding it kind of inspirational because you look at this crowd, and for a lot of us who don't believe that this is a systemically racist country and all the stuff that they put out there about MAGA and Trump supporters, this really was an overview of America, the melting pot. And Trump called it a love fest, and it absolutely was a love fest. So the Democrats are going to be hysterical now over this because it was a huge success. They'll try to paint it as otherwise. Any thinking person knows there's just no question. This was a huge success, very bold move for a Republican president to go into New York anywhere, much less the South Bronx, and hold a rally. And it really was inspirational without getting too maudlin about it. It was pure Trump, top of his game, and dispels all these myths about the racist country and all of that. It's really fantastic. So check it out. And superimpose that rally with President Biden's visit to New Hampshire earlier this week. And even the left media was saying how abysmal his appearances were in Nashville, New Hampshire. There were not even like Democrat senators, Congress people there to see Joe Biden. They showed a clip of one of his gatherings in Nashville, and it literally, in fact, some far left journalist even said it looked like a bingo game. I mean, it really did. It looked like old home night at the senior living facility with maybe 35, 40 people in the room. So it's just really stunning what's happening here. You superimpose the vibrancy of Trump's rallies and just Trump himself versus Joe Biden. And there's just really no comparison. It's really going to be interesting to see what happens here. And this was on the heel. I also asked you to superimpose. Joe Biden gave a commencement speech last week at a all-male college, mostly black. And it really was horrific. I mean, it was this, America's a racist country, and, you might love America, but America doesn't love you back. Just a really horrifically divisive, race-laden speech. And by the way, a commencement speech is supposed to be uplifting and inspiring and encouraging people about the future. And Biden gets locked into this thing that's just so negative. Again, I try to be fair with the analysis here, but it's, it is what it is. It was just an awful speech. And if you layer that over Trump's appearance at the South Bronx, which was really about making America great again, helping these people in the cities afford homes, having stuff be more affordable, it's just amazing what's going on. Also this past week, not surprisingly, in an effort to sway the election, Joe Biden once again tapped into the strategic oil reserve, and particularly in the Northeast, in an effort to bring gas prices down. Rather than drilling for oil or opening up oil exploration or undoing all the damage that he did when the day one that he took office. Rather than doing that, he keeps depleting the strategic oil reserve, and now we are down to a 20-day supply. So if this country has any kind of national emergency, hurricane, weather-related, or whatever, we're down to a 20-day supply in our strategic oil reserve. And then on top of that, like as if that wasn't enough, another like $7 billion in student loan forgiveness last week. And Biden actually brags about the fact that the Supreme Court ruled that he can't do this, and he brags about the fact that he's finding ways around it and doing it anyway. So it's unconstitutional, and he's breaking the law. And of course, it's ridiculously unfair to people like me who paid the college education for our kids. And of course, there's no reprieve for us. So Joe Biden, something's going to happen, because I just don't see him going the distance here. Also interesting this week, Bill Maher is on the Stop the Hate tour under the guise of a book that he just wrote, which is a compilation of his monologues over the last 25, 30 years on his show. And it's interesting. So he actually went on Greg Gutfeld's show. So yes, Bill Maher actually went to Fox News in New York. That's interesting. And then he was just doing these tours. He interviewed with Megyn Kelly and all these places. And it's just kind of odd to see Bill Maher. He does say that the left is burying themselves with the woke culture and all this stuff. And he's got a point there. I just don't trust Bill Maher that it's not about supporting Trump. It's about, it's driving him crazy that Biden is going to have the Democrats lose the White House because of all this dopey stuff that they're doing. But it doesn't mean that Bill Maher has had an awakening or come around. I just think he's very smug, condescending. He says he's not a far-left liberal, but I think he is a far-left liberal. And one of the most interesting exchanges I saw was with him on The View. And he was telling Joy Behar, she said, the problem with Biden is he presents as old. And Maher said, it's really not fair because Trump is almost as old as him, but Trump does not present as old. There's no comparison between the two men in their energy level, their ability to speak and function and not tip over. Trump seems to handle gravity pretty well still at his age. And it was interesting that Joy Behar, this is verbatim, and so Bill Maher's saying that Biden presents as old and all this stuff. And then Joy Behar says, but his brain is still good. Honest to God. And I'm thinking, this is like getting a sandwich roll that's all moldy, and you're picking the crust and you're picking the edges off, and you're down to this little nub of bread in the middle, and you're going, well, this part's still good. And by the way, Joy, no, his brain is not still good. His brain was never that good to begin with. And I just thought it was an interesting thing. And then she went on to say that she goes, well, I'm always afraid to say anything negative about Joe Biden because I don't want to help Trump win or help Biden lose. And there you go. That's the view. They won't speak honestly. And to Bill Maher's credit, he did say that his bond with his audience has been and has always been that he speaks his mind. He says what he really feels. He knows that not everyone's going to like it. And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. And conversely, The View has none of that. So according to Joy Behar, Biden's brain is still good. I would argue that. But nonetheless, that's her opinion. Other interesting stuff in the news this week, and last week was so busy with news that there was stuff that I kind of forgot to get to that I thought was very interesting. Just a few weeks ago, and talking RFK Jr., who I like a lot, by the way. Certainly don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's very reasonable. I like his position on the border, that this is unsustainable. I like his position on the vaccine and big pharma, all that. But he is a far left. It's just odd that he mentioned a couple of weeks ago somehow that in the course of discovering this neurological disorder that he had that ultimately affected his voice, he had said that in 2010, when he was going in for an examinations that doctors had found a dead worm in his brain. And, I thought to myself, that's a really awful way to describe being married to Cheryl Hines. I know she's a far left loon, but still, to say that I have a dead worm in my brain, why not just say the marriage is not everything I hoped it would be? We also talked about some cultural things, and I know I get a little bit hung up on this last week. And we talked about a few episodes ago these Levi's that are coming out that have a pre-made pea stain, which for most of us, if that ever happened, God forbid, you'd be trying to hide yourself and get to the nearest place where you could change clothes. But now this has become a fashion trend. And then last week we talked about this new pre-scuffed sneakers that are coming out. And so these are sneakers that are new, but made to look dirty. Some of them actually come with duct tape wrapped around them, and they're selling for like $400 or $500 and up. So it's kind of interesting. When I was doing comedy years ago, I kind of did some bits about this with the Levi's that were coming out with, pre-faded and rips in them and stuff like that. And I know it's kind of off in the weeds a little bit, but I think there's something to this whole cultural, because the notion with these sneakers was kids were buying them because they're so obsessed about their sneakers looking brand new that the minute they get a scuff on their sneakers or they start to look worn, the kids are kind of freaking out. So they're going to circumvent that emotional dilemma by buying sneakers that already look worn out. And I'm thinking to myself, would you want to be born looking 80 years old so that you don't have to deal with the aging symptoms later in life that we all have to deal with? And like I said, this cultural thing started years ago with Levi's and all that. And my concern has been that this cultural dilemma will, as it always does, permeate corporate America, because corporate America is pretty shallow. When they see a trend, they want to follow it. So the pea-stained jeans will lead to something else. The pre-scuffed sneakers that sell for 4 times as much as just a regular pair of sneakers, for some reason, will ultimately come to something else. And as I feared, corporate America is jumping right into this. So I saw just a few days ago that now Taco Bell is offering pre-digested crunchy tacos. Frankly, it's hard to tell these from a bean burrito. I don't want to get into graphic detail, but you use your imagination. You can imagine what pre-digested tacos look like. And why not? For the young kids who are, digestion is just too much work for me. Budweiser falling right in line, as I expected, trying to cover from the Dylan Mulvaney debacle, now offering their Urine Light pre-processed beer. So that was expected. What really caught me off guard was seeing the major automakers jumping into this now. And I just wanted to go over some of the options that Ford is offering now on their brand new vehicles. As an example, you can buy a brand new Ford, and for an extra $1,500, you can get a pre-dented fender. Rust holes come in at $500 each. You can get your brand new Ford with a transmission leak for an extra $2,000. If you'd like a clunking sound in the rear end, that's an extra $750. Smoke from the exhaust is $50 per jar of additive. And one of my favorites was if you wanted the nicotine-stained headliner, that varies depending on color choice. Ripped leather seats on your brand new Ford, $74 per inch. And I also like this one in particular. Now, this is GM is offering this. If you like a constant nasal whine from your exhaust system, they're calling it the Greta Thunberg option, and you can get that for just $1,000. So, as expected, corporate America jumping right into these new cultural foibles that are upon us. And like I said, maybe I'm reading too much stuff. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but seems like we're off on something a little weird here when it comes to the culture of our young people. Paying top dollar for stuff that's already worn out or has holes in it. And Naturally, I'm joking about the automaker stuff, but, catch me next week. Another interesting story about the strife and, just one American tragedy after another. This is a story about a girl named Adela Kohab. She's a law student at NYU, and she went public about her cheese addiction. Now, I've never heard this before. I grew up in an Italian family. My dad was German-Irish, but my mom was 100% Sicilian, so our family cuisine was overwhelmingly Italian. And if you think about it, Italians, if this girl had a cheese addiction, then I think it's safe to say the whole country of Italy will need rehab. If you stop and think about it, your typical Italian meal starts out with an antipasto, which is cold cuts, olives, red peppers, artichoke, and cheese. And then you go to the main course, which is lasagna with cheese, pasta with cheese, veal with cheese, meatballs with cheese, pork with cheese, and then, of course, dessert. What goes better than cheesecake? So, but it is kind of fascinating. This girl said that her cravings began in her junior year. She's a law student at NYU. And in no time at all, she said, I was stopping by either Morton Williams or Whole Foods, and I would just buy cheese by the block. And I would just eat a block of cheese with my hands, which makes me wonder if she's not just a huge mouse and hasn't identified that way yet. She said the feta fiend that she went on, she devoured an estimate 5.5 blocks of cheese per week, along with savory Parmesan crisps and stocked in her pantry. What's most unbelievable about this, and again, this goes to the cultural thing, these cultural things happening in our country, she ended up attending a 2-week wellness retreat at Hilton Head in South Carolina, which cost a minimum of $5,800 a week and helped her gain control of her cheese addiction and get control over her eating disorder. I just want to say that I will help you with your cheese addiction for half that amount. So she was paying roughly $6,000 a week. I could tell you for $3,000 a week, I'll solve your cheese addiction in a couple of days. And that's a bargain compared to what she spent. And the funny thing is this whole cheese story got me thinking, and as if you've watched the show at all, this often happens to me, that a news story will bring back a personal story for me or a personal flashback of what's probably a suppressed memory. But when Adela started talking about her cheese addiction, couldn't help but bring me back, conjured up memories for me of my years as a cheese mule for the provolone cartel. A lot of people didn't know about this. I kept it pretty much under wrap, and I don't want to detail all the gruesome details of the cheese cartels, but I would say this. You better be sure that a sharp provolone is weighed properly. You don't want to be dispensing underweight cheese to the cheese cartel. One of the trickier aspects of being a cheese mule, not surprisingly, is the often pungent odor. I remember one time trying to get through security at JFK Airport with 2 pounds of Italian pepper jack and a condom stowed away in an unnamed orifice, and let's just say the FDA cheese sniffing dogs were all over me. I did manage to get through security, but I just remember hoping that the air conditioning was working on the airplane. I managed to, extract myself from my life as a cheese mule for the provolone cartel. And I did manage to do it without spending $5,000 a week at a cheese rehab. But I do understand this poor girl, when you're eating a block of cheese on your hands, most likely kind of crouched on your hind legs, a little bit of kind of mouse stature there. You've got a problem. I love cheese, but if you're eating blocks at a time, I think it's safe to say that you've got a little bit of a cheese problem going on there. And this is the new America, by the way. It's no longer a lack of self-control. Everybody's a victim, and now you're a victim of the cheese manufacturers. Everything's an addiction, everything's a disease, and eventually everything qualifies you for some kind of government funding, and no wonder the rest of the world hates us. And just in case that wasn't enough for you, I love this story. So this again, and you have to remember I'm a son of a World War II veteran. So a lot of people my age, and my dad was 4 years in the Army, spent a year, I think, in the Sahara, spent a couple of years in Germany, he was a medic in Berlin at one point. And my dad never complained or talked about the war a single time until he was like in his 80s, maybe a couple of years before he died. He started coming clean with a lot of what they went through. But there was no therapy or therapists or medications. I mean, I'll say a lot of those guys had drinking problems, not surprisingly, but most of them went on to just live their life and have a very successful life. So this caught me another cultural foible of America. Kimberly Helmus still gets chills thinking about her first rage ritual. I don't know if anyone's seen this, just been all over the news the past couple of days. 2.5 years after her divorce, the cybersecurity engineer embarked on a retreat to Scotland with a woman named Mia Banducci, an author and self-described spiritual fairy godmother. It's funny, that was what my nickname in high school. So believe it or not, these people, Banducci has convinced these people to join her, and she constructs and holds these rage rituals. A ceremony in which participants scream and beat large sticks on the ground in the middle of the middle of the woods. So if you haven't seen this, you've got to, search for it on YouTube or Google it or something. You really have to see this. So as you might expect, mostly middle-aged, suburban, liberal white women with more money than they know what to do with. As you might expect, these rage rituals are not free. Again, it's like a couple $1,000s to go out and beat the ground with sticks for an hour under the tutelage of Mia Banducci, who, if nothing else, owes a lot of credit for, talk about a capitalism entrepreneur. I mean, man, if you can get people to pay you $2,000 to follow you deep into the woods and scream and beat the ground with sticks, that is awesome. And Mia, I just have to say, I think I know what you're up to, but I don't want to blow your gig. So good for you for talking these nitwits into paying for your rage rituals. It got me thinking too, because I'm all about making a buck when I can, and I would like to offer now, if you anyone who wants a Trump supporter rage ritual, I will arrange. You can, for $1,500, again, I'm doing the same thing as I did with the cheese rehab, trying to offer my viewers a good value. For $1,500, you can come in at the woods with me, and I'll let you beat me with a stick for half an hour for $1,500. That way you can get your MAGA Trump supporter out, get your rage out in a comfortable way. I think it's very healing for people. I've been beaten up and knocked around in my life a few times, so I'm not too worried about some loony left-wing liberal beating me with a stick. It's probably going to be a maple branch or something with the leaves still on it anyway, so I figure, hey, I could take a few welts on my back and a few open wounds for $1,500. That's pretty easy money. So if you'd like to arrange that, you can get in touch with me. Just comment on the bottom of the show here, and I'd be happy to arrange a MAGA Trump supporter rage ritual for you, so you can come out. We'll go out in the woods together. You can beat the living crap out of me with a stick of your choice for only $1,500. Can't offer you a better value than that. And also just wanted to quickly touch this week, another thing that came out last week. It was disclosed that the FBI had been authorized to use deadly force in the raid on Mar-a-Lago, going after Trump's documents. So what does that tell you? Can you imagine the FBI thought that they would have to use deadly force going in to retrieve the so-called classified documents from Mar-a-Lago? My suspicion is it probably wasn't so much that they expected that they'd have to use deadly force. It was probably more that they were hoping that they'd get to. I'm Carl Zahn. This has been the Carl Zahn Show. As I said, I'd like to stay around a little bit longer, but I've got a rage retreat to get to in 10 minutes, and I have to allow my time to pack a little knapsack with some crackers and cheese. Did I say cheese? and go out and beat the ground with a stick for an hour or two. Makes me feel better. I hope it makes you feel better too. Keep the blue side up. We'll see you next week.